Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the debate between our candidates for City Council. We have three candidates with us this evening, and they are Jeff Smith, Kenny Bonus, and Kathy Klein. I'd like to read a brief statement from the fourth candidate who was unable to be here this evening. From Mr. James Kemple, my fellow citizens of Butler, I wish to express my regret not being able to attend this debate in person as I am out of state on a prior commitment. I am in Florida volunteering my services, expertise, skill, and strength providing humanitarian aid to victims of Hurricane Irma, especially the elderly, retirees, and persons with disabilities. Veterans that are discharged, disabled, and now those in the unfortunate circumstance of being displaced from the ravages of Hurricane Irma. I fully intend to work diligently on concerning issues of Butler, drug problems, spending issues, and making our city safer for our citizens if elected. Your candidate, hoping to be at your service, James Kemple. So that is why we have three candidates here instead of four. The format will be, you'll each be given 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. Following that, we'll start a round of questions. You'll be given a question. There's no bowl to pick them out of. I'm going to go straight down my list. You'll be given 2 minutes to answer the question. Then the other two candidates will have a minute to reply to that answer. Okay? Any questions? If not, before we get started, I'm going to ask everybody to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I did not see anyone kneeling. Okay, ladies first. Let's go with Kathy on the first question.
Thank you, Ron. Good evening. My name is Kathy Klein, and I serve on City Council. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's in library science. I'm employed by the library system of Butler County. Prior to that, I was a small business owner in downtown Butler. Serving on council is a commitment to our community, to other council members, and to the city's employees. Council should work as a team to better our hometown. It listens, gathers information, plans, and acts together as a team. No one person has an answer to our challenges. Progress has been made. In 2006, there was a list of 60 homes that needed to be raised. Money was the biggest challenge to council. It was planned, budgeted, and slowly that list began to dwindle. That list now consists of 6 buildings. To me, that is progress. Through the years, partnerships have been formed and improvements have been made throughout the city. I have successfully worked with many civic organizations, including Butler Downtown, to keep our community moving toward a better place to live, work, and play. I have initiated First Responder Light Up Night. As of this year, the city now has 6 state-recognized fire code officials. This will increase community inspections for the safety of all. I'm initiating a quality of life program to be proactive in community housekeeping habits and public safety. Last week, I was introduced to the Neighborhood Drug Watch program, and I'll be sharing more information on how we can all play a part in our most daunting challenge. The city needs council members who look for better ways to improve our hometown and who work well with community members and organizations, who welcome new thoughts and ideas that will bring us back to a cohesive community. I have worked, played, served, and organized within our home community for many years, and I believe I am the best candidate for this job. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kenny Bonus. I'm a certified public accountant, and I'm a resident of Butler City. I'm a very proud resident, and even while working down in Pittsburgh, I still maintain my residency here and lived in this city until I eventually quit my job in Pittsburgh and decided to create a business within the city of Butler. I see Butler as being a place where I want to invest my time, my efforts, raise a family, and continue the progress of the community. Being a CPA, I have a skill set that requires many hours of analytical analysis and working together with budgets I think that I focus on that as my strength when coming into city council. And I think it's important to focus on our strengths. I'm proud to say that I'm the vice president of the Butler AM Rotary, which is an organization that helps with children's activities and community service projects. They're also well known for the Ice Festival. I'm also a board member on various organizations throughout the community. I believe in giving back the way my skill sets allows me to. So many times I serve in the treasurer role because I know that I'm able to fulfill that and help others through community service in that regard. I believe in working together through challenges. You can't overcome something just by yourself, and working in a team is of utmost importance. Even whenever you disagree with somebody's opinions, I believe in being respectful of others to be able to get to an accomplished goal. I'm here for the betterment of the community because I see Butler as being my home and a place that can be bettered by our efforts. I want to put egos aside and remain humble as we go through this endeavor because it's important to be able to be a servant leader. I wish the best of luck to my fellow council candidates, and I see this as a nice way to be able to get to know what their stances are on things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Jeff Smith, and I'm running for city council because I just don't believe that the incumbents understand what the city really needs to survive and to flourish. The key to saving Butler City is to save the neighborhoods, and we've really failed to focus on that here in the city for the last several years. The city needs to take steps to attract owner-occupied housing and make it more difficult for the out-of-town slumlords to carve up Butler's housing stock. I think we can work together using zoning and code enforcement to make it more difficult for our neighborhoods to be taken over in that manner by people that are more interested in making a buck than helping the community. I want to work with our neighboring townships to bring more business to the Butler area so that Butler can provide the housing to those people. As the former city treasurer of Butler, who signed every check that was written for 4 years, I've seen the waste that goes on in the city, and I want to work to stop that. Butler's a wonderful place, but it's headed in the wrong direction. The only way to change its path is to change the leadership and bring in the new Butler City Council. And I would like to be part of that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we start the questions, I would like to recognize and thank some of my co-sponsors here this evening. We've got the Butler Radio Network is live streaming this evening. I want to thank them for that. And Armstrong is taping so that they'll be able to rebroadcast over the next few weeks for those people that were not able to attend to actually see what went on here tonight and hear more about the candidates. My name is Ron Vodenecker, and I am the general manager and publisher at the Butler Eagle, and it's our pleasure to be able to co-sponsor this with Butler Downtown. And I'll throw in there the Butler Chamber of Commerce too. Stan didn't want the publicity, but we'll give it to him anyway. So with that, we're ready to get started. Okay. Kathy, I'm going to direct this first question at you. Butler has had its municipal bond rating downgraded twice this year by the credit rating firm Standard & Poor's. The city's bonds are now rated as junk, which means it will ultimately cost the city more and taxpayers more money to finance large projects and expenditures. What specific steps can Butler take to reverse these downgrades and restore financial security? What actions would you prioritize?
The first action that needs to be taken is that we need to look at the $2,000 that are, the $2 million that is PNC and with the redevelopment authority for the city of Butler. That is really what has downgraded the rating for the city, is that $2 million that is tied up in the banks. Once that comes through, then the city's ratings will go back up.
Okay.
Now, I have put a request for the redevelopment authority to come to city council this month so that we can have an in-depth discussion on how we need to get that taken care of so those ratings come back up. In the ratings, it specifically stated that as the cause for the downgrading.
Yes, it did. Okay. Ken, comment?
My comment on this is that it's not as critical of an issue as a lot of us has made it out to be, but it still is an important indicator. So we shouldn't turn a blind eye on it by any means, but will it send our city into bankruptcy? It won't. This is one of the things where it's going to be more challenging to get a bond at a lower interest rate. So until that goes back up to a higher rating, then we won't be able to get interest rates at as favorable of a level. And additionally, I talked with Solicitor Calder on this issue, and he didn't see there being any major issue with getting that $2 million to the redevelopment authority. After hearing that, it gave me a little more confidence that something like this would pass and we'd be able to move on and increase the bond rating.
Jeff?
Well, we are where we are today because of some of the decisions that were made in the past that really weren't in the best interest of the city. I would agree with Ken. It may not be an issue. It's a little embarrassing. It's just indicative of where we've come from. Personally, I don't think it's a major issue because there is no way that I would ever support the city going out and borrowing more money. Those are mistakes that we need to stop. We need to learn to live within our means, and the idea of borrowing money should be the furthest thing from anybody's minds right now.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, Ken. Emergency vehicles. Butler City emergency departments are in need of replacement vehicles. 4 police cruisers are in need of replacement, according to the police department. And firefighters have been warning for months that the department is in dire need of a ladder truck after its current vehicle was damaged on a call. These needs represent significant capital investments for the city and also have the potential to impact public safety. How should they be prioritized and paid for?
A lot of what Jeff had referred to, that it took some time to get into this position as it stands now. So we're faced with the challenge that we need to be the ones to lead the city in the right direction to remedy it in a step-by-step fashion. We've brought in various consultants in order to talk about a leasing program, in order to get us on a circulating vehicle lease budget. That way we'd be able to pay this within our means bit by bit at a time. In order to afford everything outright wouldn't make any sense. So we need to work with professionals that are willing to assist us in getting on a revolving vehicle program. What should have happened in the past is the past at this point, and we need to move on from there and work with the professionals and consultants that are able to assist us in getting to a place to be able to get those very critical vehicles that we require.
Okay. Jeff first.
In a lot of what Kenny says, I agree with. Not to be careful that we don't start sounding like a team up here. But, you know, a few years ago, actually when I was treasurer and working with Council of Governments, I had mentioned to City Council about programs where some of the lease companies are getting into the business of working with municipalities so that they take ownership of your vehicles, you have a constant payment, you're not suddenly surprised with a huge repair cost. And, you know, it's too bad we didn't look at it in the past, but I think that would be one of the keys to getting this under control.
Very good. Kathy?
There isn't a challenge out there for the city that the dollar doesn't become involved in, and that certainly is the case with our emergency vehicles. We tried very hard in order to stay within the budget and still repair the vehicles. Unfortunately, what's happened through the years is everything has come due to replace at once. I can tell you with the fire department and the equipment, we just about every week are writing grants, looking for grants. There are out there for fire apparatus, so we are continually looking for grants. Right now we have a FEMA grant, we've got state grants. So we continue to look and hope that the grants come in, that we can work them with any leasing that may be down the road.
Okay, very good, thank you. Jeff, your first question. Historical landmarks. Butler is a town with a long history, and with that comes historical buildings like the Pullman Standard Office Building on Hanson Avenue and the Penn Theatre on Main Street. Both buildings have attracted the interest of developers in the past 24 months, but neither proposed project proceeded. How would you balance preserving and promoting Butler's history with the need to foster new development and investment in the city?
Well, I'm a huge believer in preservation, but there's some things you just can't, you're not able to preserve. The Penn Theatre, it's a beautiful landmark. But for the cost it's going to take to do that, I wish the folks well. I was around when the Strand Theatre was preserved, but that took a full-time effort from one individual to follow that through for years and years. And you can't do it by committee. The Pullman Building, I would love to see that preserved. It's an icon for our community. And the idea of having some sort of housing over there to me, was a huge positive for the community. Unfortunately, I believe there were some problems that they just couldn't overcome. So we need to preserve our past. I mean, I've told people the worst thing that ever happened to Butler City was the invention of vinyl siding, because it covered up so many of the beautiful homes we have in our communities. But I think they can work together, because if you have an attractive community, if you preserve your buildings, that will foster growth. That will help the quality of living for people and make people want to move here and live here.
I'm going to do this numerous times tonight, so don't be overly surprised. So you are in favor of trying to restore Pullman Standard, but not quite as positive on the Penn Theatre?
I have been through the Penn Theatre. I have seen it, and I have a sense of what it will take to preserve that. I've always thought that the best thing for the Penn Theatre would be to maintain the facade, maintain the lobby, raise the rest of it, and have a courtyard. You know, what council tried to do with their open park, it just didn't work out because people could wander into it. But by doing that at the Penn Theatre, you'd have an enclosed area so that people could go into it, they could enjoy it, and it would be a park. So to me, that's how you'd preserve the Penn Theatre. The Pullman Building, I've never had the privilege of being through it. I've only seen it on the outside. So I'm not as familiar with that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Kathy?
There again, it goes back to the dollar. However, I'm a big advocate for preserving our history. I have, in the past, worked with Butler Downtown, and at one point, we worked on trying to do an historical ordinance that didn't go through. I think some of us now wish that ordinance, had been put into place. But we have to find a way that, when we think about our history and we think of the values of our history, we have to find a way to actually hit on that history and those values and bring them to current today. A lot when I talk with people, they talk about more the feelings, what it made them feel like back then. Well, those feelings are still there. We just need to know how to connect that with modern day. And that but with the historical preservation and the buildings, absolutely, I would support in bringing back the Penn Theatre and the Pullman Building.
Yeah.
I
Kenny?
believe that historic preservation is a critical role in the community, especially its factor when it comes to the economy. A lot of people come to an area based on its history, Gettysburg, for instance. So in relation to the Penn Theatre, I'm on that board in order to help restore the Penn Theatre. And part of what we're doing is just creating an interest in the Penn Theatre, showing the community that this is an important part. What it may become is unknown at some days, but what we want it to be is a keystone of economic development. I also work closely with the CDC, just in conversation and realizing that they help to attract investors. So potentially getting investors to invest in the Pullman Building or the theater, bringing those outside dollars to create something that can be economic stimulator.
Okay. Did somebody say ordinance? You did, okay. And we're going to start with you on non-discrimination ordinance. A proposed anti-discrimination ordinance has proven to be one of the most divisive issues taken up by the city's elected officials in the last year. It's been changed, tabled, abandoned and revisited over a period of many months, and still no resolution has been reached. I'm going to read from a different sheet of paper because the question was submitted from two different people, worded a little bit differently. The City of Butler has been considering establishing non-discrimination protections for its LGBTQ residents for some time now. With the state legislature unwilling to have this discussion in Harrisburg, where do you stand on Butler's proposed non-discrimination ordinance, and what effect do you think it will have on the city if it is or if it is not passed?
So your basic question is how it will affect the city if it is or is not?
My basic
passed?
question is, do you favor it or oppose it, and reasons why?
Okay. Well, I have been involved with the HRC for many months, and I can tell you what it is not. It is not a bathroom bill. It is not an ordinance that fills any quotas. It is about human rights, and it's human rights that are inherent to all human beings. It's really something that you are entitled by virtue of just being human. These rights are based on the principle of respect for that individual. I don't know why or how anyone would want to refuse any of these basic human rights to an individual.
And that was, I'd vote for it or against it.
I would vote for it.
Thank you.
And if I could add,
Please.
I do not believe that it would be detrimental to the city. In fact, I think as far as activity and revenues, I think it would generate more into the city. There are statistics out there that prove that to happen.
Okay. Ken?
So for the sake of transparency, I would be against this particular ordinance, the way it's written, under the advisement of our city solicitor, who is versed in law, who has read through this and determined whether or not something like this is appropriate. If it were to be passed, which I would not want it to be, it could potentially be detrimental to small business owners that are then forced to comply with certain acts within there. It also allows for people to have legal ammunition against those business owners, so it opens them to legal liability. And then it also affects a lot of the churchgoers and people of faith. A lot of them, as residents, have approached me and asked me to vote no for it. So I want to represent my constituents, so thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
You cannot legislate morality. You cannot legislate morality. Passing the HRC ordinance would at best create tolerance. And the LGBT community should want more than tolerance. They should be looking for acceptance. And the only way that will happen is through the building of strong neighborhoods. When people know their neighbors as people, not as a member of a group, until people's hearts are softened, there's not going to be any progress, no matter what ordinance you pass. So you just can't soften hearts with ordinances. So I'm opposed to it for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, where do you do, Kenny? Union negotiation and relationships. Capital investments and equipment aren't the only issue facing the city's emergency departments. Both the police and firefighter bargaining units are currently negotiating new contracts. These two departments account for more than 44% of the city's $8.9 million budget for 2017. How should Butler approach contract negotiations with its public safety and emergency response personnel? Are you satisfied with the way these negotiations have proceeded in the past? How can city officials balance public safety and the need to control costs?
So I'm not satisfied with the way these negotiations have been handled in the past. A lot of the financial crisis that we're going through currently relates to the unions. It's just the nature of how it has transpired. Everybody's acted within their own incentives, and it's been quite a challenge. So with these new union negotiations, it's critical that we address those pieces that allow for significant spending, which is overtime. So That's part of it, and then also being able to stop the wage increases and things of that nature. When it comes to overtime, I think we need to look at this critically and have the department heads responsible if their department goes over, and provide fair warning on why that department is going over. Either it wasn't budgeted appropriately, or something's going on where there's just excessive overtime. It's the nature of the job that it would be incurred, but when you look at the budget, the overtime is a critical element that can help the city get back on track.
Is most of the overtime scheduled overtime?
From my understanding, there is scheduled overtime, and it's just based on lack of people being available in order to fill those other roles. There's been talk of having different scenarios, such as the part-time program in the fire department, which will help alleviate a lot of that, because then it'll allow an extra person that isn't going to be earning overtime wages to be able to get into there and help to reduce that overtime cost.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff?
I think most people in the city like having their fire department. They may not like the cost, but I think most people like the fire department. The fire department's budget, or their agreement, is what it is. It's taken years to get here, and under the laws of Pennsylvania, that agreement's not likely to change. The key is going to be to find the revenues to support that fire department. And again, going back to my communities, as we grow the communities, have raised the level of income, I think we can do that. One thing, though, about the union negotiations, you need to have a good management, labor, working relationship. The problem in Butler is that we have some people in council that just want to go out and bust the union, and then we have other people in council that are advocates for the union. Neither of those are good. There has to be a healthy respect. When I was city treasurer, I had a great working relationship with the clerical union. And that's what we need to have with the police, or the fire department, police department as well. Thank you.
Quick question, Jeff, on the relationship. It appears as though in recent years that there has been some give from the police department and their contract, while with the exception of firing the fire department, the chief of the fire department, there hasn't been as much with the fire department. Now, obviously, that's severe, but it does seem to be, is there a reason why there'd be more give and take with the police department versus the fire department?
Well, and in fairness, I've been away from the city building for 2 years. But when I was there as treasurer, my sense was that there was more of that management union relationship on the fire between the police and the chief and the mayor, whereas on the fire side, because they had advocates or an advocate on council promoting for them, they really there wasn't that same sort of working together. It was more, let's let council fight it out, and we'll see what we can get from it.
Thank you. Kathy?
Could you repeat the original question, please?
Yes. Capital investments in equipment aren't the only issue facing the city's emergency departments. Both the police and firefighter bargaining units are currently negotiating new contracts. These two departments account for more than 44% of the $8.9 million budget for 2017. How should Butler approach contract negotiations with its public safety and emergency response personnel? Are you satisfied with the way these negotiations have proceeded in the past? And how can city officials balance public safety and the need to control costs?
Well, we always are looking at costs and overtime costs in the city, contrary to what it may appear. We do. And as far as with the police and the fire department, I know historically through the years, the fire department have given concessions. Maybe the last contract, there were not the concessions. And the last contract too, the police department, actually what they were awarded was through arbitration, and where they lost. And when the fire department went into arbitration, nothing was taken away. So that's something that was taken out of the city's hands. But we always have to be aware of our overtime, and that's why, we have initiated, as of about 3 weeks ago, for the fire department, we initiated a part-time program that is working quite well, that will help to alleviate some of the overtime costs in the fire department.
Thank you. Okay. Where we at, Jeff, huh? Okay. Some people, including Butler Downtown, are pushing for more, Butler Downtown is in the organization, are pushing for more downtown events for the city. But the latest one, the Italian Festival, cost the city over $7,000, even after the Butler County Tourism kicked in $5,000. Where do we draw the line on these festivities, and should the city, should the council be responsible for these types of activities?
Yeah. All of the activities that happen downtown on the streets, the Foodie Fridays, the Italian Festival, those are all important factors to the quality of life in the city. But the problem is, for the city, is it doesn't have any money. And I enjoy those events. My family and I like to go to them. But I think that the people that put those events on, they need to pay for themselves and not have the taxpayers pay for them. All of those vendors, street vendors, were making money there. They were there as a business venture. They weren't there for our quality of life. They were to make a buck selling their food. So they should be paying for that opportunity to present those festivals. And maybe Butler Town can organize them, figure out what it's going to cost to put it on, including the extra police service. And then that's what they charge the vendors so they can come in. So I'm all for the events downtown. I just think that they should not be paid for by the taxpayers.
I'm going to stay with you. One of the big expenses is the police presence at such events. The current police contract calls for a certain amount of mandatory coverage of these events. Can that be negotiated as a change? Can that policy be renegotiated?
You never think you need those police there until something happens. And then heaven help you, because people are going to say, where were the police? Why weren't they there? I trust Chief Brown. If Chief Brown says, you know what, we need X number of patrolmen there, and that matches up with the contract, then I would support him. If Chief Brown said, you know what, I think I can cover this event with half of what's in the contract, then that's certainly something that should be negotiated. But I would defer to the law enforcement experts to help make that decision.
Okay, Kathy, I'd like you to comment on it, and in particular, I believe that it's 25% of the cost for security is to be paid by the organization sponsoring. I believe that's correct.
25% of the total cost, yes, of our departments.
Not just overtime, it's the whole department weighs in? I'm not sure how they come up with that number.
Yeah, it's 25% of the total cost that it costs the city. Typically, when we have an event, you'll have police presence, typically not fire department because we're pretty centrally located, but then you'll have parks and streets. So you take a total of the overtime costs or any costs that the city supports an event, and 25% of that is the responsibility of the organizer.
Well, some people blame the loss of some events, such as the car cruise, to that charge. I don't know really if that was the only excuse for pulling out of the downtown, but at least some people will point the finger that direction. Is that a number that we are pretty well negotiated to at this point in time? Jeff said the sponsoring organization should pay the bill. Yeah. Well, that seems to be the biggest part of the bill. Should that be increased to 100%?
Yeah. We have tried before in the past to increase it to the 100%, and the organizations were not able to pay that. because most of these are small organizations. Now, the Italian Festival may be, a different organization. This is the first year that we've had them in our community. So, but now with the Italian Festival, I can see there, with it being the first year, that next year, we will be able to and should be able to cut back on overtime costs on that. But I'm always willing to look at increasing that 25%. I think our community enjoys, and in some areas expects, events to bring them downtown or in our community. In fact, it's what makes part of our community. But I think that, and two, whenever we bring these and we work with these folks, we have to welcome them. We can't make it difficult for them working in our community. So I'm in favor of the event, and I'm always in favor of keeping the costs down.
Okay. Ken?
It's definitely a balancing act when it comes to holding events and taking the cost. A lot of times you have to be creative with these organizations in order to allow an event to be held. You don't want to make it so many barriers that the events don't even happen and we don't have any festivals at all. But we also shouldn't be losing our shirt on the event and suffering a $7,000 loss. A lot of times it comes down to being creative and keeping the communication open, such as having the event find a sponsorship to help team up that cost that the city would incur. A lot of that is just working together and showing good faith that a sponsor would help promote that. And there's a lot of value there for everybody at hand, and a sponsor would be happy to be able to sponsor something where there'd be thousands of people on our main street. So working creative solutions like that, I think, is an important part, but suffering $7,000 loss like that is not sustainable, and that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? Kathy, right? Jeff had the last one? Kathy. I'm old, Jeff, give me a break. All right, BC3 is a great Butler County success story. And yes, they have at least some interest in moving into a downtown presence as an extension of their main campus. Your thoughts?
Was that direct? Is it my turn?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, all right. Okay. I think it would be wonderful, and I certainly would work very hard at working with them and bringing it downtown. I think it would be a big asset, a big benefit to the downtown area, and also to BC3. And I think that it would, there again, broaden and help to build that cohesive community that we need to get back to. Absolutely, I would support it.
Yeah. Ken?
I definitely support BC3 choosing to invest in our downtown. I think getting education into the city is a critical element. It also helps with people who can't find their way out to the BC3 campus. It's also nice to have an organization with such a respectable track record choose to want to invest into our city. I think right there you have an indicator of how people are starting to see the city come around. I think it's important to work with BC3 and allow them to communicate with us to figure out the best way of going about doing that. But they look to Altoona and other places where this has been successful, and they have a track record of how to best do this. So in following along with that, I think it would be wise to look to what's been done in the past and capitalize on those successes.
I would point out that one of those successes that President Newpower and his staff have been so successful on is finding major donors. Those people that can still write a check for $1 million. That's very impressive that they're able to go out and spread the message of what they're doing and bring those dollars home. Okay, Jeff?
I think it would be a great idea. I'm a trustee up at Slippery Rock University, and when the school district was going through its reductions last year, I actually brought up at one of the trustee meetings that maybe we should look at the junior high school if they shuttered it, that would be a great branch for Slippery Rock University. So I'm fully in favor of BC3 having a city campus, because not only would it bring more traffic to the city, The big difference between it and a lot of the other nonprofits, that's the downside. If BC3 had a considerable footprint, it would take away some of the real estate taxes. But unlike a lot of the nonprofits, they would be bringing people onto the campus who would likely be spending money in town and would help the restaurants, and it would bring a youthfulness to the downtown that I think would be great. So I hope they do it.
Very good, thank you. Everybody got a chance, okay, everybody got a shot on that one. Okay, Kenny, these next three questions are all gonna have to do with cooperation. The decline in the number of students in the Butler School District points to a declining future tax base. Fewer people equals fewer taxpayers. Fewer students equal fewer taxpayers. Do you see a way to become more active with the school district to help retain students, families, and therefore businesses?
I think that communication with the school board could be the first place to start with something like that, talking about long-term strategy and how both organizations see their strategy. Getting together and understanding where they're going simultaneously while understanding where the city is going to be critical. A lot of that comes down to the communication between the two organizations. In the way of increasing the tax base, a lot of that too doesn't have to necessarily mean people raising families and being right in the city, but it could be attracting young professionals to live within the city who are making good salaries and helping to increase the tax base that way. I guess then at that point there would be children that would go to school from there, so potentially increase attendance at that point. So I think that it is important to work together, but also focus on what we can do as a city to help attract those people to want to live in the city of Butler.
Jeff?
There's some synergy between the school district and the city. For example, the treasurer in the city collects their taxes, their real estate taxes, and passes them through. But we do have different goals. Their goal is to educate students. Ours is to run the city. But we both benefit from bringing more people into the community and increasing the tax base. So I think that we have similar goals. We should both be focused on bringing people into the cities, the communities. Maybe closer involvement between the elementary schools and the communities to work together that way would be one area where we could have some partnerships, summer park programs, things like that.
Okay, Kathy?
Anytime we have an opportunity to work with another organization that is a part of our community, we certainly should do that. And the school district is a very important part of our community. So I think that continuing to build those relationships and working with them, see at times maybe how we may help them. Sometimes it's just with parking issues around the elementary schools, because the elementary schools are the two that in the city that we work most with, and we would be able to assist and to help them. But to bring the students, I think that goes back to our neighborhoods and to our housing stock. When we start working on that and getting folks to come in and buy and to live in the city, I think that ultimately will help the school district also.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so we're to you again, Jeff. Loss of Friedman's grocery store is a serious blow to the downtown area. It is unlikely we can attract another full-scale grocer into the downtown, as things are. What realistic ideas do you have for supplying a normal opportunity for people in the city to do their grocery shopping? And what changes need to be made in areas such as public transportation and so on as a direct result of losing Friedman's?
It's unfortunate any time a business closes, whether it's a grocery store or furniture store. But it's a reality of the economic model we have in this country. Friedman's couldn't make enough money to operate their store. And I don't know that we can really expect anybody else to do the same. I think what we can hope for is that you start having more specialized stores in downtown. You know, my wife loves to walk over to Miller Meats and get dinner. And, you know, they sometimes have vegetables and a lot of selection there. You know, maybe there will be somebody who's an entrepreneur will open up more of a, you know, a small scale corner shop. But you're right, we're not going to get an Aldi's. We're not going to get any, you know, we may get a discount shopping place. As far as public transportation, you know, Butler City is one of the few places in the county, other than the township and I guess Center Township, that have any public transportation. The city cannot afford to be running buses out to Walmart, any more buses out to Walmart or up to the Clearview, so that people can go get their grocery shopping. I mean, it's unfortunate, but if there's enough demand, I think somebody will open up a shopping place. Until then, I think they'll have to rely on what is currently available downtown.
Kathy?
I do agree with Jeff. It is very unfortunate that Friedman's had to close its doors. However, I like to think optimistically that something with a lot of encouragement maybe and reaching out to folks, bringing something back into that location. Now, I do understand, I believe that Friedman's owns that building, so certainly nothing would be able to go in there without Friedman's being a part of it. Or I had heard that Friedman's had even thought maybe they would open something a little newer and different downtown. But until that happens, and I'm all for the specialty stores and the shops, but unfortunately some of our families and low-income folks cannot afford some of the prices in some of our specialty stores. They do need some place where they can go to a grocery store. I would be happy to advocate for even a dedicated run, even if it's, you know, one time a day or whatever from the city to Aldi's, so that they could go to a grocery store. And that's certainly something that we would have to work with the Butler Transit Authority. And I think that would be very doable.
Okay. Ken?
I was really disappointed whenever I found out Freeman's closed. That's where I would go for all my groceries, and I go away for 2 weeks and my grocery store closes. So that was pretty upsetting and almost ruined my vacation. But in all seriousness, I think the free market speaks a lot, and if there's an opportunity for a grocer to go in here, Freeman's may have been falling on more difficult times and more challenges, so at that point, it opens up the arena for others who are more entrepreneurial in spirit to come in and make a good opportunity. I think that people are really attracted to different venues like Trader Joe's and things that Whole Foods. Doesn't mean that we'll get that right there, but there's an opportunity that's available at this point in time. So you could see it as a challenge and opportunity at once. And then as for the transit authority, we've been moving more towards a regionalized transit system, which involves the county and the county actually acquiring the transit authority. So at that point in time, people will be able to get further within the county in order to make certain purchases. So I think that something like that is also a good opportunity, but it's not going to solve the problem. I think we definitely need something in the city.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, who are we on? Who's up? I think Jeff started the question on Freedman's, right? Okay. Okay, then, we're back over to Kathy. There was a day when Butler Township wanted to merge with the city.
65, I believe.
Today, they would not be so likely to consider it.
Probably not.
Is it feasible for the city to try and do more shared things, shared programs with both Butler and Center Township? And if so, how could that happen?
I think that it is feasible. I'm not familiar or know enough with Center Township. I think when we look at the services that we provide our municipalities, we're basically looking at our police department and our fire departments. And of course, I think in both of those departments, they have a mutual aid agreement that we work together now. Is there room for that merger maybe to happen and to get a little closer? I think that there is, but that again goes back to, communicating and making sure that it's beneficial for both municipalities, just not one or the other. It has to be something that both municipalities need in order to make that partnership happen.
Ken?
I think that working with local municipalities, especially a municipality that encompasses the city when you look at a map, I think it's critical. Regularly during those transit authority discussions, we worked with them just to keep the dialogue open and be able to work together and make progress in that regard. But a shared police force, I believe, has been talked about in the past, which it could be revisited in the future. It really depends on the people at the table and the concessions being willing to give. And then also in the way of, you had mentioned that they wanted to merge at one point in time. Well, if Butler ever wanted to merge with the township, we'd have to probably earn our keep and be in a much better position than we are today, where they'd want to merge with us. So I think that would be way down the road, but it's still important to communicate with the local municipalities. And a lot of times the idea sharing can lead to great ideas that can help bring in additional revenues.
Jeff?
Obviously, it's critical that Butler City works with the surrounding areas to bring in businesses, economic development, because the key to Butler isn't necessarily to bring businesses into Butler, it's to bring them into the surrounding areas, but have the people live in Butler, so that we get the benefit of the earned income tax, because that's really what drives municipalities. One thing that's really unfortunate is, a few years ago, the state spent a tremendous amount of money on a joint comprehensive plan for the city, Butler Township, Center Township, I think Summit was part of it. And you know what? It was like so many of these studies, they did it, they celebrated it, and they put it up on the shelf. I think now they have a meeting once a year, and they send one of the people from the zoning office to go to the meeting, and they meet. That's the sort of thing that needs to be a living document, and that's what the city needs to do.
Thank you. I got a couple more to get to, and we've only got about 10 minutes, so. Parking assets. The previous administration had pursued leveraging the city's parking assets by contracting the management of them to a private company as a means of revenue generation. In a time when the city is in need of new revenue sources, would you consider this approach to parking management, and how do you feel about the need to have a paid parking manager?
That specific proposition that was brought to council at that point in time, it had a lot of different language, so it wasn't necessarily just, hey, we sell the parking assets to somebody and we make a lot of money. We also had to ensure that there would be a buyer too, and it put us on the line for $60,000 to pay the person just to look around for a buyer for us. So upon detailed reading of that, I think that was a no right off the bat until there was further consideration given, especially how we didn't budget for $60,000 with no guarantee. That wouldn't be a wise use of taxpayer dollars. Other than that, the paid position of a parking manager, I think, is something that should be critically looked at in this next budgeting session, just because of the need to be able to consolidate roles. Sometimes one person can do the role of many people for the same amount of pay that they were making. I think being efficient like that, and it needs to be understood that we need to be looking for something like this. We're not here to create jobs, we're here to maintain a city with the taxpayers' money. So.
Jeff?
Well, first, it was extremely unfortunate that City Council disbanded the parking authority just to be able to get to those assets that the parking authority had. And when the parking authority was an independent entity, and I was the treasurer for the parking authority, we didn't have a paid manager. I did a lot of the work, other people did the work, and we were able to get by without it. At this point, as a source of revenue, I think that the city should look very seriously. Now, I don't know that many of the details about the recent deal, but the idea of selling the parking assets to a third party to generate revenue, I think is definitely something that should be explored. Those parking garages are going to have issues, and I'm pretty sure the city's not putting money aside for those repairs that are going to come due. And unless we start doing that, now's the time to consider moving it.
Kathy?
The parking, I agree with Kenny. The proposition that came to council was not to the city's benefit, and it was pretty much a no-brainer to say no to it. Doesn't mean that we should not keep exploring, the possibility out there that if it would benefit the city. As far as the parking manager goes and the dissolving of the parking authority, that actually was something that was recommended certainly by the state with the early intervention program to dissolve that. It had been, authorities had become outdated. But with the parking manager, I was not in favor of a paid full-time position of a parking manager. I tried and pushed for, because of what was in the makings, to have a manager to coordinate things, but do an hourly wage, to see, not just give a flat salary. And obviously I didn't win that particular vote. But I think that all needs to be looked at, even to the point that I know we visited the city of Warren, I did, and the police chief actually oversees the parking in the city of Warren, which is another idea and food for thought.
Okay. Very good. I'd like to point out a group of people that are here with us this evening. They're kind of hard to see. They're wearing bright green. But I'm both pleased and proud of those folks that are here. They are all in recovery programs of one sort or another, and they are looking to do good in the community and to show the community that they are capable of being positive influences in this community. And I see the same faces out on the streets every day working and trying to do things. And I want to thank them for their attendance tonight. Now, that will put us on the opioid question. Just this week, Beaver County has joined in a lawsuit to go after doctors, pharmaceutical companies, manufacturers who provide those medicines which get the people started on the track down the road to being addicts and being, at that point, a detriment to society while they are in their full addiction. What can the city do? And I want to emphasize that I am aware this city is making an effort. I think that our law enforcement people are, and there's a number of groups working hard at it. But what's left out there? What is the next step? What would you folks recommend we do next in this to fight this scourge? I believe we're Jeff. I think so.
Well, the whole opioid problem, it's a societal problem, it's a national problem, and it's got its genesis in just the lack of hope and opportunity that our youth are facing. And I think that people just look for an escape, and unfortunately, it's a bad one. But there are things that the city can do, to help preserve the city. One, we need to keep after the slumlords who are, nobody, whether they're on drugs or not on drugs, should have to live in some of the places that exist in Butler. And unfortunately, some of the people that are affected by addiction are the ones who end up being there. It's not right for them, and it just adds to that lack of hope, having to live in those kinds of places. But we do need the county, I think we need to put pressure on the county to actually do something. When the people are caught selling the drugs, the county needs to do something, not give them the probation. Have some stiff penalties for that. And, we just need to work with our local communities, neighboring townships, to create more jobs. Because if we create those jobs and the people have hope, I think that will help them avoid the drugs.
Kathy?
Well, certainly I'm an advocate for law enforcement for the dealers, and recovery placement, that's something that I'm a big advocate for, but we can't push taking and putting people in beds in recovery until there is a game plan in place. Right now, there is none. There's always a need for beds. People have to wait forever to get a bed, to get assistance. I think where the city can right now is in education, because no matter who you are and what age you are, if you want to help reverse the effects of this crisis in our homes, reach out. There is a role for everybody. I met a young lady last Tuesday. I was at BC3, I think it was Sam Quinones, with the Dreamland presentation. Wonderful presentation. Get the book, read Dreamland. It'll be a real eye-opener. But I met her, and she is part of, she actually initiated, it is called the Neighborhood Drug Watch. I met with her twice already, and I'm going to be rolling that out in the city. It's very simple. It's a way for all of us to get involved, to simply say we care. No longer are we going to be turning our heads the other way, but we're going to be watching, and we're going to be reporting. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Ken?
The opioid issue is obviously a major issue at the national level and involves a multifaceted approach. It can't be solved with just one thing, or else it would be solved. A lot of this relates to education, as Kathy had mentioned, and ensuring that people understand the issue. They have a lot of different seminars that they hold over at the community college and then also at the high school. These types of things are important. There's also an organization called Candle Inc. that does a reality tour that educates young children from an early age about the dangers of this. And it's not even just young children, it's their parents as well. Anecdotally speaking, I heard a pharmacist that went to this in the past, and because of what she learned at the reality tour, she became more strict with giving out those pain pills to people that looked like they were clearly using. So it starts in small areas. Definitely need to involve the police and working together as a team in the county and at the state level, but education is what we can do at this level.
Very good, thank you. Now we have time for 1 minute apiece. And Jeff, we're going to start with you for your final words.
Okay. Final words. You know, I've talked a lot tonight about the importance of communities. And, you know, it's not just a safety feel-good thing. Just as an example, Butler Township, Butler City, same school district. If you're working, you've got pretty much the same commute. So why do people live in Butler Township, not Butler City? Because the perceived quality of life. If you look at what their earned income per capita is compared to what Butler City is, if we could have the same demographics in Butler City economically that they have in Butler Township, do you know how much money that would bring into the city? Probably not. $650,000. $650,000 would allow the city, that's the equivalent of 9 mills. You know, you pay 30 mills on your homes. That's 1/3 of it could be replaced or pay off bills. So it's the future of the city are its neighborhoods, and I'd like to help us get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
I have been serving the residents in the city on city council. I've never had a personal agenda. I don't plan on having a personal agenda. My agenda is the community and listening to the community and what's best for the community. If you would like to chat with me more, I will tell you that I will be at the Butler Public Library in October 28th and November 1st. We'll do a little meet and greet, and we can talk one-on-one and absolutely any issues that are important to you. And that, but I've never ever had a personal agenda. I've always looked at the city as a whole, no matter what neighborhood you live in, and the housing, downtown. It is a mix. That's what makes our community a community, that we have to be diversified and continue working toward those goals.
Thank you. Ken?
I'm a big believer in not looking just to the public officials to make a difference, but also looking to yourself to actually make a difference as well. I think a lot of times we don't take ownership of things, and this is me trying to take ownership and try to go the right route. But also along with that, I want to be able to help empower people to be able to make the connections, to be able to do the things that can impact their community. I like to be able to connect people to opportunities that are willing to offer their services. We can't individually do this alone. We have to work as a group and as a community. Sometimes it takes a person just to show that it's possible, but I want to be here for everyone alike to be able to show that just one person can help lead others and make a positive change in the community. I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you again to everyone that did come out tonight. I hope it has been informative. I hope that it makes you want to show up on the Tuesday in November to cast your ballot. These three folks, along with Jim, who is absent this evening, are your four candidates. We'll be electing two of them to serve on City Council. So think long and hard about it and make a good choice. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you again to the Butler Radio Network and to Armstrong and to my folks at the Eagle, and good night.
Armstrong would like to say thank you for your generosity and donations to our Healing Heroes initiative. With your help, we've raised the funds necessary to train 8 service dogs from Guardian Angels to be donated to area veterans suffering from disabilities such as PTSD and brain injury, among others. If you or a loved one are a qualifying veteran and would like to apply, please visit medicalservicedogs.org and click on Applications. Together, we can unleash the power of hope, the power of giving, the power to heal.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2017 debate for the position of the mayor of the city of Butler. Our candidates with us this evening are Benjamin Smith and Jamie Lee Gearing. Our program tonight will operate in the following manner. You will each be given 2 minutes to introduce yourself, say what the niceties you'd like, introduce your families if that's what you want to do, and then we will move on to questions. The questions, you'll each be given a question. You'll have 2 minutes to answer it. The other person will be given a minute to respond. And as I've already mentioned to the candidates off camera, that the first session went so well, we didn't have to at any point pull anybody down and throw things at them or anything. So if you guys would try to stay close to the right amount of time, we'll continue to proceed and things will go well. My name's Ron Vodnecker, and I am the general manager and publisher of the Butler Eagle. And I would like to thank the Butler Radio Network and Armstrong for being with us here this evening to help get the word out as to who these candidates are, what they stand for, and what they mean going forward to the city of Butler. So unless either of you have a question for me, which I'll refuse to answer, we'll get started. Okay? Want soft ones first, or just go right for the jugular? Oh, introductions. Okay, we'll go ladies first.
Oh, we did ladies first last round. Ben, please.
Ladies first.
Dang.
I'm in charge here.
All right, Ron. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, thank you all for being here. Thanks to all the sponsors that have made tonight possible. And also, Ron, I learned from the last debate. Thank you to my family. Honestly, your love and support over these last several months have been instrumental in the campaign, so I appreciate it very much. My name is Jamie Lee Gearing, and I am the Democratic candidate for the mayor's seat in the city of Butler. I'm a local business owner, I'm an involved community member, and I'm also a parent to 3 children that I'm raising here in this community. Butler County has been my home for 35 years. Butler City has been my community for the last 23. I'm ingrained in this community. I've served on a multitude of boards, many organizations, and sat with several different organizations within our city government as well. My background is in small business. I'm an owner in an accounting firm here in the community, and my background extends back about 17 years. I have a knowledge base in several different industries, practices, and principles with the business community, and these aspects not only define my candidacy, but also set me apart, as these are things that we're going to need in the upcoming years to really make the instrumental changes in the community that we need to see. We are at a very defining moment in our community. Years of property neglect, increasing crime, decreasing revenue, has left us struggling very financially and division within the community. We cannot resolve these hurdles if we do not find ways to come together and work with one another. We need to create an effective government that has the strategical planning aspects in place to create a future that is prosperous, progressive, and safe for all the community members. We all agree that we have the same end goal, so tonight is really talking about how do we reach those goals, the who, what, when, where, and why of what we need to do. And it is my hope tonight that you guys will understand that I am on the path for that and that you are supportive and ready to go with all of these plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben?
Thanks. I'm Ben Smith, and I'm the Republican candidate for mayor in the city of Butler. My wife Emily is here. We've been married for about 5.5 years, and she's been very supportive as well, and I appreciate that. We have 2 kids. They just turned 2 and 4 last week, and I was told earlier this evening they are the cutest kids in town, and I will challenge anyone who wants to contest that. We do own a house here in the city and live happily amongst other residents trying to make the city a better place. I own Reclamation Brewing Company. We are directly across the street, so I encourage everyone to walk out the front door and head right across if you like. We are a family establishment. We do make our own beer, but we serve families every night of the week. I attend Westminster Presbyterian Church on a regular basis, and I went to Penn State for my undergraduate degree. I obtained a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. I focused on management, marketing, and finance, and I've been able to put much of that into practice, not only in my college career, but since then in multiple jobs that I hope to speak about. After I graduated there, I went to Geneva College for work. I obtained a master's degree while there, and got in over my head with too much work at the time. I do like to have fun on occasion. I have a podcast about election history, so I'm very interested in politics. I've been involved in political things most of my life, and I see great things for the future of the city. Many people ask me when I'm knocking on doors, talking to people that I meet on occasion, why are you running? I'm running because my life is in Butler. My life depends on Butler. I own a house here. I have my family here. I own a business here. I want to stay here and continue to see the city prosper and see the people around me do better, to see our community and our area continue to prosper. And prosperity is kind of the name of my game. I think prosperity solves a multitude of problems, and prosperity brings about positive things as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, before we start with the questions, I do want to recognize our host this evening. And we're broadcasting from the Holly Pointe Building in downtown Butler, and the managing partner, Sherry Reedy, has made this available to us. It's a very nice facility. It's just the right size for what we're doing here tonight, and I would like to give her a nice round of applause for that. Her co-owner happens to be her father, and she insisted that I throw that in there too, so I did. Okay, we let Jamie Lee go first on that, so I'm going to throw the first question to you, Ben. Sure. All right, excuse me, there's oftentimes confusion between what people are responsible for, whether they are in county government or city government. I spent too much time this week trying to explain that to people, that county commissioners didn't have anything to do with the city's budget. But there are certainly things that are shared between the city and the county. I don't believe they have their own police department or fire department, either one. So right there are 2 major things that they need to share. What else can we be doing in conjunction with the county that might help both?
One major thing is our drug task force, and not that that's a new initiative, but it is an initiative that's currently existing. That our drug task force is a combination of officers from various parts of our community. So not only Butler City, but the townships and some other individuals as well. So that's a major undertaking that I think has to work properly in order for many of the other questions that are likely to be posed or have already been posed to work well in addition. So we have shared resources, we have shared roads. We share many of our city services, like you mentioned, Ron. And I think that in order for the city to work well with the county, we need to make sure there's an open line of communication. I think, I don't want to give too many props to Kevin because he's on the other side, you know. But Kevin has done a great job, as well as the other commissioners, of helping to bridge that gap in recent years and to make sure there's a constant line of communication that exists between the two entities. So without communication, without cooperation, we can't hope to see any of those future endeavors happen. And I think that we need to engender a reality in which that can happen.
Okay. Jamie?
So I think that there is a bit of a misnomer in regards to what the county does provide service-wise to the city of Butler. The county has been one of our largest supporters. They have taken on tasks and roles within our community that have been for the betterment of many of the residents that are here, including financial support through block grants. I know that actively, like right now, they're looking at the Butler County Infrastructure Bank, which would be a huge asset to the city of Butler to help with areas of blight, to help with our infrastructure improvement. So the county really does already provide a lot of services. Now, I agree with Ben, the open lines of communication. I have personally taken it upon myself over these last several months to really shore up those lines of communication and ensure that I have already been talking to the county in ways that the city can help, in ways that the county can come together, because we need to be prepared and ready to roll in January for the plans and missions that we have in place. So I'd like to say thank you to the county for being supportive and, you know, say we're already there.
Okay, very good, thank you. I actually had a couple of questions submitted from other media, and I'm going to go to those two questions next. From Ryan, down at the Pittsburgh City paper, over here in the dull-colored orange shirt over here. Here's a question he submitted to me. The city of Butler has been considering establishing non-discrimination protection for its LGBT residents for some time now. With the state legislature unwilling to have this discussion in Harrisburg, where do you stand on Butler's proposed LGBT non-discrimination ordinance, and what effect do you think it will have on the city if or if not passed? Jamie, you're first.
I actually had the ability to sit down with Ryan earlier today and talk a lot about this issue. But one of the things that we need to recognize is in the state of PA, there are not currently LGBTQ equality provisions on a state level. What that means is that for discrimination issues, there is no state representation. So you're saying to an entire community, we're not going to provide if there is discrimination cases for you. When we talk about the ordinance, you have to understand then why it is so important to the LGBTQ community to have on a local level discrimination practices. Now, we also need to recognize that there's another side to this argument. Those that are very uncomfortable with what that ordinance is going to mean, how it's going to affect their day-to-day life. And honestly, I don't know why better education or communication from our city government to our community about what this ordinance stands for and how it will affect their life has not already been undertaken. Now, personally for me, for Jamie, I am always a person that believes in equality. I think that that is something that at our stage in the game in 2017, why are we even having a discussion about equality? Shouldn't be there. It should just already be in place. But I also recognize that we need to make sure that the educational aspects are out there so that our community can voice their opinion. As a politician, I cannot just speak on what it is that Jamie Lee wants. I have to speak to what my community wants. And the only way that I can do that and vote effectively on a measure such as this is by receiving the feedback from my community. So while I know that you want me to put a yes or no on this, I will not until I have had the opportunity to actually speak to my community through a public forum where representation from both sides is present. Thank you.
You haven't had the past 4 months to do that?
I have not had the opportunity to speak to every person that's sitting here, and every person that's sitting here has a vested interest. If I only spoke to the people that are loud and speaking about it a lot, then I'm doing a disservice to my entire community. This needs to be a community decision. It does not need to be a single person decision.
Okay. Ben?
I have had the opportunity to speak to many of our residents. I've knocked on nearly 4,000 doors since February, and the overwhelming majority of individuals in our community are in opposition to the proposed ordinance. I will fully admit there is probably and almost definitely discrimination, even in Butler City. There is also no doubt in my mind that people suffer because of that discrimination. However, I hesitate to think that putting an organization in place, a committee in place that would then hear cases and determine whether or not those individuals are able to go to courts to basically be a mediator would solve any real problems. And I think if we're going to have a conversation about solving discrimination, we need to do it in a more substantial, tangible way. Further, I think that the potential of businesses, small businesses especially, being hurt by an ordinance of this type is evident, it is real. There have been no cases that have concluded, but there have been over a dozen opened in courts in Pennsylvania over this exact wording and these exact ordinances. So my vote would be a definitive no, as I have heard from the community.
Okay, thank both of you. Oh, go ahead, please.
I'd like to say, yes, I have talked to community members as well, but Ben, you have actively not sat down with several of the major portions of this community. People have reached out to you and you have refused to meet with them or speak with them. So I really want to just make a clear defining line that several meetings you have not participated in regards to this. And there are some misnomers as to how the impact of small business. This is not something to create court cases. This is something to provide a buffer for small business.
Okay, we will have time. We will have time later for that.
Understood.
Okay. All right. The next question actually comes from a local media blog, and I'll address this with social media is still a new monster. The city of Butler is plagued by people spreading fake news and hatred. While many agree the best way to handle this is to ignore them, should the city be more on the offensive against this kind of garbage site? Now, that leads me to a question completely unrelated to that. The Butler Soapbox has submitted this question, and I applaud his being civil at most times. The previous administration had pursued leveraging the city's parking assets by contracting the management of them to a private company as a means of revenue generation. In a time when the city is in need of new revenue sources, would you consider this approach to parking management, and how do you feel about the need to have a paid parking manager? We'll go back to that other question, but I thought it was important to explain why the Butler Soapbox was allowed to submit a question. Jamie, I believe it's you.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I thought I went first with the last one.
Am I wrong?
Oh, it's fine. We're good.
Okay.
The situation with selling yet another asset in Butler City is something that we need to take on with great thought. It's not something that we need to make a knee-jerk reaction out of. The understanding is that, if we sell our parking, we're going to garner quite a bit of money. We could live off the interest aspects of those monies and substantiate some of the revenue issues that we have within our community. My problem is this. Parking already is a very precarious situation in downtown, and if we have a parking company come in and buy that from us, we're going to see increased rates. We're going to see possibly meters popping back up on Main Street, which would be detrimental to our business district that we're already desperately trying to get foot traffic to. And eventually, once we've garnered what we can from the interest aspect of that, we're going to end up losing money in this deal. You never sell an asset and make a ton of money off of it. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem, and it does not viably work. I think that the parking manager that we have hired on currently, those funds could better be allocated to a city manager that could do strategic planning for our city, that could do grant writing for our city. There are better uses for that money other than the salary for a parking manager.
Thank you, Ben.
Could you restate the question?
I'll be glad to. I'm not going back to the first part that had nothing to do with it. I'll just go to the right question.
Fine, yeah.
Okay. The previous administration had pursued leveraging the city's parking assets by contracting the management of them to a private company as a means of revenue generation. In a time when the city is in need of new revenue sources, would you consider this approach to parking management? And how do you feel about the need to have a paid parking manager?
I think I would consider all approaches. I think that the approach that was presented to council earlier in the year that our current mayor was in favor of was a very bad approach, and it was a $60,000 endeavor that was not guaranteed to provide results. So I think that we should be open to exploring options. I don't know that that is the best option. As far as a paid parking manager, I don't see the need, but I also am not one to make knee-jerk reactions. So I would want to evaluate the position from an insider's point of view. I've discussed the position with Jimmy. He's my next-door business neighbor, so we have had some small conversations about his roles. But I do think that it could be leveraged into a larger position. That position could have more responsibilities, or it could be absolved into another position as well. So I think that we have bigger issues with our parking, or at least as big of issues with our parking. We currently pay a service to come in from outside and take the quarters out of the meters. It's not a ton of money, but it is a substantial portion of money. So if we're willing to sneeze at something like that, why would we be interested in saving money in other ways? So I think we really need to consider how we manage our parking. We need to consider our parking manager. And again, we need to assess some of those simple costs that kind of nickel and dime us to death, almost literally, and assess those things objectively.
Very good, thank you. Okay, each of you have been very involved in the past few months in Butler downtown activities. Some people, including Butler Downtown, the organization, are pushing for more downtown events for the city, but the latest one, the Italian Festival, cost the city over $7,000, even after Butler County Tourism kicked in $5,000. Where do we draw the line, and how much do you value these weekend activities? Who's going first?
I think I'll take this.
Okay.
So I think these festivals are integral to our community. I think that they provide a reason for individuals to come downtown to experience that Main Street is not the death trap that everyone seems to believe it is. If you were to only pay attention to social media and the Butler Eagles Facebook page, everyone seems to think that it is a very bad place. And so it gives a good opportunity for us to present our community in a positive light. It also gives an opportunity for people to patronize local businesses, and it really does help the local business community thrive. I think that as far as the cost of them, I think there needs to be some sort of balance, because we need to understand that bringing festivals in is going to help our local economy, and by helping not only our local economy, but also helping the perception of Butler City, we are going to continue to go on an upward trajectory. Now, I think there should be a difference, though, between tax-paying citizens and tax-paying business owners as compared to outside entities that bring in events. So outside entities, I think there should be a higher rate, if not a 100% rate. If you want to bring an event into Butler City, there should be more of the cost burden on that outside entity. If you are a paying citizen, if you pay your taxes as a business or a citizen, I think that some of those costs can be absolved by the city because you've already paid some of them.
Okay. Jamie?
I'm going to agree with Ben on this one. Having events within downtown are instrumental in renewing the perspective that we have on our community and on our city. It draws people in. Those people come in, they see the great businesses and communities that we have, and they're more apt to come back. So for the downtown area, it's kind of a great sales pitch to have these events in downtown. As far as the city is concerned, the cost for some of these events really should be being absorbed a little more by the promoters or the creators of the events. Appropriate mercantile tax being associated to vendors coming in from out of the county and ensuring that they're paying their portion either through the mercantile tax or even for their vendor fees as they're coming into the community. If we're having a local small town community event that we ourselves have put together and promoted, all the more reason to ensure we're using local vendors and that we're utilizing those within our community. We do need to remember that our business district is not just Main Street, it is the entire community.
Okay, so just taking off on on your answers, is there a, would they have to, if they came with a sponsor, well, let's pick on the Italian festival just because it was the most recent, that's my only reason for it. If they had, if they had been sponsored by one of the local churches, would they then be eligible for the lesser fee, or how do we determine that?
By sponsor, do you mean financially, or?
Yeah, if they, the Italian festival is sponsored by, Saint whoever, it's church.
If they're an outside entity and they're required to pay a bill, I don't care who pays
Okay.
that bill, as long as it's not the city's money.
Okay, but then something like the radio station's Christmas parade, it's okay to stay at the 25%, that's something that's truly a community type
Well, this
of
is where
asset.
you really look at the cost analysis on a project. The organizational aspects that need to come along with these events should be there with cost analysis fully fleshed out, so you know what those anticipated costs are going to be. There's nothing worse than halfway through planning an event whenever you decide, oh my gosh, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money to pay our police department, and now we're incurring extra OT hours on our police department that we were just complaining about the budget on. So having effective cost analysis when we're planning these to really see if we do need sponsorships to cover costs, that's where you're going to determine that. And I think that's what the question was, is how are we going to determine what their portion is? And that's through effective cost analysis.
Okay, it's interesting that you worry about where the money comes from. I was in a meeting last week with Jack Cohen of the Tourism Bureau, and he stopped me twice and said, "Ron, you got to quit worrying about the money. If it's really worthwhile, we'll find you the money." Okay, Jack. and he believed it 100%, and I believe in Jack, so I'm certainly not going to question his sincerity on it.
Lots of new stuff.
We should do lots of new stuff, that's right.
If we have the money for it.
Okay. Let's talk about the opioid epidemic at this point, all right? Again, everybody's involved, the county's involved, everyone through the courthouse and all the churches are involved and so on. I don't know if we're making any headway or not. How do you feel? What would you like to see done differently, and what do you see that maybe we haven't quite hit on correctly yet? Jamie, you this time? Okay.
Oh, am I up first?
Yeah.
Okay. The opioid problem that we have had, as mentioned earlier, it is a nationwide problem. We're not unique. This is not something that's individual to Butler County. We have to really tackle this on several different avenues. Obviously, having law enforcement involved, ensuring that there are reasonable punishments associated to crimes. One of the bigger aspects that I know that gets brought up a lot is the use of Narcan. And if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to kind of focus on that just a little bit here. I personally am never going to be a person that has to choose whether a mother, brother, sister, or father lives or dies. That is never going to be a choice that I am going to personally need to make. So our Narcan needs to be available to anybody in our community that needs it and utilizes it. But there also needs to be accountability aspects that are put in place. Accountability is what we can utilize to help others see that there are other avenues that they can traverse in life. So I know that there's legislation currently within the state that they're looking at that would allow for, perhaps after your first, second, or third time of Narcan use, there's mandatory rehabilitation services that are put in place. We also need to talk about the effect, though, that this has on our residents and our communities and our neighborhoods. Now, the Community Watch program is already starting, to really have an impact in the community, and I would like to see us flesh that out more, where it's more integrated with our police department. When we combine those two aspects together, we make a more actionable network that our drug task force can utilize then to help, with fighting the crime that we're seeing. So if we're going to talk about opioids, we really do need to talk about it on that broad spectrum, where we need to look at the law aspect, we need to look at the policing aspect, the community aspect, and also, very importantly, the recovery aspect, because that is a portion that they need to be just as ingrained in our community and feel that they have the ability to change their life around as well.
Thank you. Ben?
I think it starts at a young age, so we need to put better systems in place, better programs in place for our young people to be educated. And of course, that comes along with, as individuals move and get older, they go through the process, and financial security, financial training comes along with that. And oftentimes we find that, yes, we do have individuals who are in crisis because of some sort of prescription drug or something of the sort that has made them dependent, and they feel the need to run to something else to get that same situation. So we do need to have recovery programs installed. We do need to have partnerships with county and local nonprofits and things of that sort that will help individuals recover and go through the processes appropriate. As far as our dealers and our, I'm saying my time's up, but I'll just say that we need to continue working with the task force that we have at hand. We need to continue working to be hard on slumlords. We need to continue working to make our city a better place for citizens to live, and to show the people who are bringing this poison into our community that we don't want them here.
Okay. I wanted to be prepared this evening, so I just pulled some numbers that may or may not be surprising to you two. The 2016 census for the city of Butler said there were 13,155 people living in the city. Of that, 7,420, or 57%, were actually registered to vote. The split between Republicans and Democrats, very close, 175 more Democrats than Republicans. But that left 18% as independent, libertarian, Green Party, or Joe Smith's party. I don't know, whatever they chose to be. I was struck that as vocal as the past few months have been, and I'll grant it, some of it was anti-current administration, but there were a lot of people talking about this, and yet our registered voters are only 57%. What can we do to increase the interest? I take that as a lack of interest, a total lack of how one of you is going to spend their money down the road. Now, they're going to complain, but they're not going to bother to go out and vote. How can we encourage more people out in this fashion? Ben?
So 57% is actually pretty good nationwide. Not that means it's good, but it is about on par or a little higher than the nationwide average. I think getting people involved in their own community encourages them to be more involved in city government. I know that's what's done it for a number of my friends and family members and community members as well. Just knowing and seeing what's happening encourages them to want to get involved in an actual voting fashion. So encouraging more people to be involved is always going to be a difficult task, but I think with programs that pretty much everyone who's interested in city government, the two of us and the people before us included, want to put in place, that goes a long way for encouraging people to be really interested in their community.
I honestly think that this election cycle that we're about to see is going to possibly blow the numbers out of the water as far as what we have seen with voter turnout. You have a large populace that is more motivated than ever to be involved in the aspects of their government, from the federal level the whole way down to the local level. And I'm kind of glad that we're talking about this election, because while it's very important for the two of us, because we are sitting, on the actual ballot, there are some very major aspects of this election cycle that we need to pay attention to, all the way up from your state representatives, your school board representatives, your local government. Everything that affects your day-to-day life, including the judicial aspects, is up for vote on this ballot. So if that does not encourage people to get out and vote, I sincerely hope that them looking at the two of us being so proactive, especially at our age, is going to encourage and entice more to show up. But I think we're going to see that regardless after what has occurred in the last few months.
Very good. Would either one of you like to address the current administration and the attacks that have been laid upon the two of you by the incumbent who failed to get on the ballot?
I think you're right. I'll go ahead and tackle it first. Immaturity has no place in politics. It really doesn't. And when you are utilizing social media to demean, mock, hurt, or harm others, then you have pretty much proven why it is that you did not win your primary election as the incumbent. I wish Tom well. I hope that he finds whatever it is in life that he needs to make himself happy. But honestly, I pay very little attention to what it is that he is barking about.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I as well try to pay as very little attention as possible, but I'm constantly sent screenshots and links to things that he's posted about me and Jamie specifically. Tom has said so many untrue things about me in the last, since February. I can't even begin to describe them. I don't know why. I do know why I challenged his position and beat him in the race. I wish him well. I have not lashed out against him, and I don't know why such anger towards me. I feel like if I were in his position, I would feel disappointed in myself, disappointed maybe even in the community, but certainly not angry at someone who fought a fair race and still won. So it's disappointing to hear.
Thank you. I commend you both on your answers. Okay. Whose turn is it?
I don't know.
All right. This one's for I don't know. Finance. Butler had its municipal bond rating downgraded twice this year by the credit rating firm Standard & Poor's. The city's bonds are now rated as junk, which means it will ultimately cost the city more and taxpayers more money to finance large projects and expenditures. What specific steps can Butler take to reverse these downgrades and restore financial security? What actions would you prioritize? Ben?
So in the debate before us for the city council seats, it was mentioned that we shouldn't be looking at spending money, and that's primarily what this bond downgrade or these the rating downgrades do. They make it harder for us to borrow money at a good interest rate. So right now we're not in a position where we should be borrowing money, nor are we in a position where we need to borrow money. I think what we need to do is address every penny that's spent in our city, and so that's not going to fix all the problems immediately, but what it is going to do is create a mentality where we're unwilling to spend money that doesn't need to be spent. We're not talking huge amounts of money when we're talking about cuts, and by cuts I'm not talking about destabilizing our economy, I'm not talking about getting rid of major city services or anything like that. I'm talking about little things. Actually, Jeff Smith, I have to give him credit for this, gave me the example that there aren't a lot of $100 bills in our budget that can be cut, but there are a lot of ones and fives that can be cut. So we need to look at something that just as simple as our payroll service. It's only a few $1,000s that we're talking about, but our payroll service, it's not the best option anymore. It used to be a good option. It's a brand new service for us, but for a service, it's a larger company that has gone downhill and had competitors come up against them, and we need to just evaluate little things like that where we can make dents in the spending that the city is doing. So I think that, again, we need to be cautious, be unwilling to borrow where it's absolutely unnecessary. We need to be unwilling to spend money that we don't have and live within our means. And over time, with prosperity and with bringing in more businesses, more homeowners, we're going to see those ratings increase.
Okay. Jamie?
So I agree. There are some areas on our budget that we need to look at as far as cash savings. However, that's not really going to resolve the issue we have with our bond. The bond issue is two major factors that we have. Lack of a strategic plan moving forward, and also the Center City project specific to the hotel that is so far behind that we are carrying a $2 million note that should not be on the city. So those are the two aspects. If we're going to really address the bond, that's where we need to go. We need to get the hotel done. We need to hold our GC accountable. We need to make sure that those punch list items are being taken care of. We're carrying the burden for a project that should have already been completed. So that's one of the very first things that we need to do, and that's a proactive measure we can take. We could take that tomorrow. And Kathy has already mentioned that she is going to be bringing in the Redevelopment Authority to speak about that, so I'm hopeful that we can resolve that quickly. The other aspect is the strategic planning. When Standards & Poor's is looking at us and they're judging our ability, what they're looking at is, do they have a strategic plan moving forward to renew your revenue streams? They know that we're already working with no money. They want to see if we're willing and able to come up with new money. So hiring a city manager that can do complete city planning, that can bring in new businesses and not just small businesses, but larger businesses, and redevelop our, the corporate aspects of downtown life. Those are the things that we need to talk about. Those are the things we need to look at whenever we are discussing the bond rate. And unfortunately, we do need to spend money right now. Got a ladder truck and we got a bunch of police cars, so we better get that rate up if we're going to be borrowing money for those.
Thank you. There are people that would say that both of you are too young, too inexperienced, and question your toughness to deal with the issues of this city. It is very important to deal with all employees fairly, both union and non-union, but it always comes down to, are you tough enough? Always seems to be the question thrown at me when I've had to deal with union situations and so on. So I ask you, are you tough enough to handle the union situations in the city of Butler?
Well, if we're talking about toughness, I'll say this. I was the last child in a family of 5 living in the country. I learned how to be tough. If I wanted to play with the boys, that meant I had to play with the boys. So I learned to be tough, and I'm a pretty tenacious gal, and when you sit down and talk to me, you'll learn and discover that. The other aspect, my age, I think people forget sometimes that I am a 35-year-old adult female that is raising 3 children and has a business that she's running, managing, and operating. So I have the ability, the experience, the maturity to carry this position, and I'm hopeful that tonight you're going to see that, really blossom. Some of the other things, though, when we're talking about experience, what experience do we mean? Governmental experience, because this is entry-level government work. We're not talking about running for the state or for the president's position. I am running for my local government. So this is about as entry-level as you can get in this game. As far as experience goes, 17 years of working in the small business world. And what's great with my experience in the small business world is it's not specific to one business type. I have worked with every type of entity, business structure, from new to old, from fresh and shiny that they walked into a door with a nice new loan and were able to set everything up exactly the way they want it, to companies that, they're 30, 40 years into it, and there's such a tangled mess of bad decisions that have been made that we have to untangle them and get them back on that fresh ground. That's experience that I bring to the table, and I am very proud to stand behind that experience. And I know I'm questioned a lot about what is my business because I don't talk about it a lot. Ethically, I just feel it's wrong to drive money to buy business through my political endeavors, but my company name is Hudson Business Service. It was started by my mother, and I am a partner in that company along with my brothers, and I'm very proud of that company. Hudson Business Service, feel free to check us out if you'd like.
We're charging for commercials tonight.
I know, sorry.
Ben?
Yeah. Am I tough enough? Yes. I've been managing employees since I was 17 years old. I've had to hire people. I've had to fire people. I've had to go through hard times where employees have lost a loved one or lost a parent. I understand that it is not only a position where you need to be able to nurture people, but also to have really hard conversations and tell them no a whole lot. When I was to get into the small business aspect, to the business experience aspect, yes, I am an owner of one, soon to be 2 businesses here in the city, but I also worked on strategic plans for businesses and feasibility studies for new businesses when I was at Penn State. When I was there, I was on the president's board, one of the 5 people that were chosen to be on that board to sit on a committee of individuals who were kind of there to help guide new businesses and help bring new businesses about and to put strategic plans into place for them. So I understand the business world. I understand how to manage employees, and I understand how to say no when needed.
Very good, thank you. Okay, historical landmarks. Butler is a town with a long history, and with that comes historical buildings like the Pullman Standard Office Building on Hanson Avenue and the Penn Theatre on Main Street. Both buildings have attracted the interest of developers in the past 24 months, but neither proposed project proceeded. How would you balance preserving and promoting Butler's history with the need to foster new development and investment in the city? Jamie?
Oh, okay. The Penn Theatre is kind of a pivotal aspect to our downtown community. We are trying to grow an entertainment district in downtown, and to have an entertainment district, you do need to have some sort of entertainment venue in your main street. I am very supportive of the initiatives that are out there as far as the Penn Theatre goes, the work that's been being done with it, the renovation options that are being presented. I would like to see us maybe utilize some of those historical credits that we have a little more, go after some bigger fish in regards to grant monies, because we do have a pretty hefty price tag on getting that done. But you're talking about preserving the integrity of your downtown, and I think that there are ways that we can do that and that will be very effective. We also need to recognize, though, that that is not the only cultural offering that we have in downtown. We have the Butler Little Theater, we have the Merredon Museum, we have many other offerings, including the Art Center, that we utilize for entertainment purposes that, maybe we need to be a little more conscientious of bringing those groups into the fold when we're talking about preserving and saving our downtown. Now, as far as the Pullman building goes, I know it was just within the last couple of years we had a very large organization looking at that to put some office buildings in. And unfortunately for them, it just was not going to geographically work for many of their employees and for what it was that they needed to accomplish. That doesn't mean that structure is no longer a marketable structure. With the development that's going on within the Pullman area right now, I know that there's been a lot of work done to get the ground available to new businesses coming in. I know that there's been work done to make the lot sizes. The Kent Hartley family has been working pretty extensively over there. So I think that there's actually an opportunity here in the next year or two where we can see somebody enticed by the work going on down there to purchase that building and put maybe some office space into there.
Ben?
I'm fully in support of both landmarks being restored and put into operation. I think the feasibility of them is difficult, but I know that the group that's especially working with the Penn Theatre has been doing a great job. I had the opportunity to walk through recently with Dane Winkler, and he was able to just show me and talk to me about some of the plans that are in place. The thing I think we need to realize and remember is that not a single dime of city money should be spent on these projects. So we can be supportive, we can help even apply for grants, we can encourage entities to work on these projects, but we need to make sure that our city's finances aren't getting wrapped up in them as it goes. And I don't think that's been the case thus far, and I don't think it will be in the future, but I think it's an important statement to make. I think that having the Penn Theatre in our downtown creates an entirely new element for us, a renewed element for us. It brings people into town not only for maybe dinner and drinks and hopefully a hotel here in the very near future, but also for some entertainment. Those are the kind of the landmarks that the city needs to have. Those are the things that people need to be able to do in order to come from outside and then hopefully stay here.
Okay, thank you. The city of Butler and Butler County are both blessed with having some things that have remained local that aren't that way in many communities anymore. A number of times there were offers to take over Butler Memorial Hospital, and the board saw fit to remain a private, locally controlled entity. Then we have BC3, which is the shining star up on the hill over there. And I was at a meeting last week, and President Nick can hardly control himself when he starts talking about how well they've done and how well they expect them to continue. And I was very pleased to hear him talk about part of their next movement would be to look at some kind of a partnership within the city. No one really knows what that's going to look like yet. He doesn't have any particular place outlined that he wants to go into, but he wants to become a partner with the city. He wants to have students in the city, and he even talked about somehow connecting the walking trail down and include the city. Now, how he's going to get under the viaducts and down across the creek and all that, I don't know. But if anybody can figure it out, Nick will. So I ask each of you, what is your thoughts as to trying to incorporate education? And while we're thinking about it, there isn't any reason not to consider the hospital having some sort of, with all the outpatient facilities they now have, maybe have something like that in the middle of the downtown as well. What do you think? I don't know who's up. Ben, you're up.
All right. So, I mean, it would sound ridiculous to say no, right? I mean, of course, we want the community college to come downtown. We want anyone who will come downtown and be a positive asset to our community to come downtown. Now, I know that the community college is a nonprofit, and of course, there's many people who would rally against nonprofits entering the city, but this is a nonprofit that would bring enhancements to our downtown. They would put money into buildings in our downtown. They would bring people to our downtown, people who are going to spend money here. And for every dollar spent, a portion of that goes to the city. So having a strategic partnership where we can not only see revenue potentially through tax dollars for the city, tax dollars that are already in place, we're not talking new taxes here, is a no-brainer. But also having the ability to harness those individuals, those students. We need people to come in and do internships. We need people to come and be employed at our businesses and our other nonprofits as well. We need for Butler to prosper in a way that we haven't seen. And the youngness of that crowd, the age of the crowd that would potentially be attending the community college would be a huge asset to our community. It would also allow for other learners to have an opportunity to go to school where they may not have had that opportunity with just a few miles down the road. So something within walking distance is amazing. It would provide opportunities for our city to set up educational encounters, essentially. So, I talk a lot about financial literacy, and to have an organization, a community college in town that, of course, has students and professors that would be able to teach those types of things and bring hope to people who have formerly had no hope would be an amazing asset to our community.
Thank you. Jamie?
So I think we all can agree that it's a great idea to have BC3 down here. So what I'm going to talk about is the meetings and experiences that I've actually had with the Board of Trustees and also with the Strategic Planning Committee with BC3. We were both extended that opportunity to go out and meet with the Board of Trustees and be a part of the strategic plan of BC3 coming to the community. I really appreciated being given that opportunity, and I took it fully, and I'm happy to say that I am going to work with this group regardless of the outcome in November. Bringing BC3 to the downtown community is something that I have been proactively seeking for about 3 years now. Back when the Worsleys building first went to sale, I was trying to encourage the college to purchase it to put student housing in, because the benefit of having students in our downtown from a commerce aspect, you're helping your grocery stores, your day-to-day stores, and yes, of course, the nightlife will also benefit, but you also have your other core businesses that are 9-to-5 businesses that are also benefiting. Nick has a saying, Dr. Newpower has a saying, everybody has skin in the game. And that's what this strategic plan is really going to come down to, is everybody participating in this plan, meaning not only will Butler City participate, Butler County Community College will participate, the CDC. Many of us will be coming together to actually make this plan work. And I anticipate probably in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to really see that relationship blossom. So it's a great plan. I'm glad that we're finally working towards it, and I look forward to what it's going to do for our economy.
Thank you. Okay. We've got about enough time to let each of you do a wrap-up. So if you'll gather your thoughts there for a second. I again want to thank Sherry Reedy here at the Holly Pointe Building for hosting us this evening. I want to thank Butler Radio Network and Armstrong for being here to help us open a few more eyes to what's going on within our community, and to try to draw as many people as possible out to not only vote, but to make an educated vote. And I thank both of you for your time. I thank both of you for being willing to put yourselves out on the line for this. Whichever of you ends up in that seat, I'm sure will do a fine job, and I hope the other one will be there to support them. So we started this evening with Jamie, so we'll let you go first in your wrap-up, Ben.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. It's great to see people interested and involved in their local community. We talk about low voter turnout, low voter registration. You matter. You are the people who matter with those low numbers. And it's really encouraging to see you here. Our city's biggest problem right now is to get out of the hole we are in, the financial hole we're in. And we need to continue to work towards that in many different ways. I am not a politician. I'm running for office because I believe I can help. I believe I have a strategic mind that I can put into play to help bring prosperity to Butler. I am not afraid of the slumlords. I will go after them with all I have. I do not need to get reelected. You do not need, I do not need the slumlords' votes in 4 years if I am in. Vote me out, that's fine. I want to get in, I want to make a difference, and I want to leave Butler a better place than I made it when I got here. I think we need to seriously take a look around, look at the environment that we have already, create a better environment for our children, create a better environment for future generations that are going to come to Butler, for the people that we want to bring into Butler, for the people who are going to grow up in Butler and know Butler is their home. I don't want Butler to be a scary place. I don't want Butler to be an intimidating place. I want it to be the place that my children know and love, and I want other people to see that as well. What you see is what you get with me. I have a lot of ideas. I'm not a public speaker. Words don't roll off my tongue easily, but I guarantee I will work harder than anyone you've ever met to get the job done. Thanks.
So we're both in agreement, strategic planning needs to take place in our community. It's where we're at, it's what we need to do. Thankfully, the last 10 months I have spent meeting with every organization, every community leader, every person that would be willing to sit down and talk to me, I sat down and talked with. So we've already got the groundwork laid out for what that strategic plan is going to look like. We unfortunately are not in a position right now where we can afford to learn on the job. We need to be effective from day one, and we need to start making these changes now. With this strategic plan, we need to talk about what is it going to look like. Not just the idea of it, but how are we going to implement this? I'm a firm believer we need to hire a city manager, and not just any city manager, but one that has grant writing capabilities and city planning capabilities. We must bring effectiveness back to our police department, and we need to do that by bringing our desk sergeant position back to the police department. If we want to have our police officers out on patrol and actually taking care of the problems that we're seeing day to day, then they need to not be inundated with paperwork and constant callbacks to the station to do their job. So that is one of those key plans in a strategic plan that we need to see implemented. We also need to be installing accountability markers for every single one of our departments, for every single one of our authorities, and also for every single one of our city council members. They need to be held as accountable as every other person for the plans that we have going forward. And by putting those accountability markers in place, we're ensuring that their voice is a part of the resolution to the problem. We also need to have a cohesive plan that looks at our business district, and we need to be mindful of the fact that our business district extends beyond the Main Street corridor. We have businesses in every single neighborhood of our city, and those businesses need to be paid attention to just as much as our downtown Main Street businesses. And one of the other more pressing issues that we immediately need to get on is our residential, our community housing, our property values that have been continually plummeting. We need to hold landlords accountable. We need to be utilizing the nuisance ordinances that we already have on the books, and we need to flesh out an inspection program so that those houses are being taken care of in the manner that they should be. So guys, tonight I hope that you learned a lot about me, but if not, please come October 28th and also on November 4th to the Butler County Library. We can have a meet and greet, really dig into these issues because there are many more that we need to talk about. So thank you all for being here tonight. Ron, thank you once again for doing this. Sherry for hosting, and for all that have been involved, and also my family. Cody, I promise you we're going to get ice cream, okay? All right, thank you guys.
My parting comment tonight that I would like to make is I want to point out that these folks are fighting over a $10,000 a year job. Every once in a while, I see the comment on social media. The first thing we ought to do is cut the mayor's salary down some, and we can pay for a whole lot more policemen. So sometimes you get exactly what you're paying for that $10,000, though, don't you? So thank you again, and good luck to both of you, and we'll see what happens in November. Good night, everybody.